It's time for a reveal of my latest artwork. But wait, I had a request for a time-lapse video. Okay, so I always start with the eyes whenever I do a new drawing or new painting. It's one of those things, if I mess it up, it's just easier to start over. And so the eye being kind of the focal point of the image is what I start with. Now you'll see me here laying down white. Oil pastels will pick up whatever's underneath them, so you can never really truly layer something that's a pure color. So with the highlights that are going to be the whitest, I kind of put those in first, just to kind of get those areas protected from any kind of muddiness of the color. Now granted, I'm still mixing stuff in, but because the white went down first, I can always kind of cut back down to it with a using kind of a sgraffito type technique. You notice I use the blending stump an awful lot. That's one of the ways I get details. The other way being using colored pencils. Now you'll notice that these are Sennelier oil pastels, and the colored pencils are the Faber-Castell Polychromos. So it's kind of the highest quality materials for what I'm doing here. The board that it's on is a pastel board from a company called Ampersand. I tend to actually like sanded paper better for getting details, but the pastel boards are much more useful when it comes to framing. They don't warp. I've had that, and for especially larger images, the paper tends to bow out a little bit when I frame them. So I'm beginning to use this pastel board a lot more. So there I am using the blending stump a lot more colored pencil. One of the ways I like to work is from the focal point outward, which is a little different from the way most artists work. Most artists are going to kind of do the whole thing at once, maybe block in larger areas of color and then kind of cut the details in, or work from the background to the foreground. I kind of work with my own psychology for this kind of stuff, which is I'm really excited when I start a work, and that excitement starts to wane the more I go on. So I'm much more patient about doing the details when I start. So I always start with a focal point and then kind of work outwards. And then at any given point, I can kind of call it done. Not so much with this board, but with paper, I can always just cut it down to the part that's finished. But it's sort of an unusual way of working, but it works for me. But you can see here how I've kind of worked outwards from the crocodile's head and actually started to put the background in around it, as opposed to doing all the crocodile first and then all the background. So these scales were very repetitive. It took a little bit of patience, but I think it kind of turned out well in the end. You might notice a few jumps in this. I didn't record absolutely every stroke of every pastel. My little phone was beginning to run out of space, so it had to be a little bit selective in what I was going to record. So if every once in a while a bunch of details pop in, that's what was going on. So as I started in the background, you'll notice I've started using the bigger pastel sticks, just covering kind of a lot of space. Now this blue here, actually, I like the way this worked out. It kind of made it look like there's some sky kind of peeking through. I mean, the way I'm intending this, though, it's going to be a pretty blurry background, just kind of giving an indication that this guy's living in a swamp somewhere. So back to working on various little scales, and I would say this took quite some time. Just to give you an idea, I'm running this at speed of 16 times what it recorded at. Now, it may vary a little bit because I did realize that some of my videos were shot in slow-mo, so it might get a little weird. This might be one of the ones that was in slow-mo where you see me holding a pastel for what would be a very long time at 16x speed in real life. Something else to notice is that the camera begins to shake a lot. My phone was, the camera I was using was clipped to the actual board that I was working on. So as I got closer to the bottom, things started to shake a lot. So I apologize for the earthquakes. They actually work themselves out of it when I'm watching this at 16x speed. At real speed, it was pretty jittery. So one of the things I like to do, and I've kind of mentioned it a few before now, to get details in, I like to use the colored pencils. Now these are going to be razor sharp when I use them. And what they're actually doing is cutting through the oil pastels, going back down to the initial surface. This technique works really well on sanded paper, not quite as great on the pastel board, but it still does work. It does have a tendency to create a lot of what I call crumbs, which is the sort of the oil pastel being where it's been peeled up by the colored pencils, and I wind up having to use a kneaded eraser to clean the image when I'm done. So the arms and legs of this guy are going to look a bit rougher than the head, and that's by design because I don't want so much detail in the arms and legs that it detracts from the head, which is really the part I want the viewer to kind of focus on the most. Still though, I want them to look pretty good, so I spent a good deal of time working the colors in just the way I liked them on this this front arm here. Really, I wanted to give more the impression of just the way the light's hitting that arm. Turned out to be a little bit more challenging than I anticipated for kind of a minor part, and you'll see a jump there because it took me some time to get the details in, but I got used to doing it. So for this back leg here, I was able to do it much more quickly. So even though the sky is not going to have, or the background's not going to have that much detail in it, I still wanted it to kind of obey the laws of light, so that the light. So in this case, the right side of the crocodile is going to be the illuminated part, shining down like it's coming through holes in the swamp trees. So I put down the lighter colors to the right of this guy. Now I've jumped to working on the details of the hand. It looks like I'm spending a lot of time on the details of this, or making it very detailed, but I'm not really. I'm kind of just roughing it in. Again, I don't want it to detract from the crocodile's teeth and eyes. So when I'm working on these hands, I mean, there is an underlying drawing, but the oil pastel is covered over pretty quickly because it's just too detailed. So I'm tending to almost freehand these. They wound up being pretty different from the reference image I was using. And if you're wondering about reference images, yeah, I used 6 different reference images for this crocodile. And I get my reference images from Adobe Stock, which is also where I sell a few images as stock images, some of my digital art, but I've learned to like them over the years. And then it's also feels at least a little more legit to pay for the rights to use those source images or reference images. Though a lot of times I will just use my own reference images from photos I take when I visit zoos or something like that. Okay, this again gets back to that background kind of following the pattern of the light. So I have a dark corner where is opposite where the light's coming from. And I kind of wanted to make this look like some sort of cypress tree kind of hiding in the background with like Spanish moss hanging down from it or something like that. But I didn't want to be too detailed because I really don't want the background to overwhelm the foreground at all. Because the main theme or the main subject of this is a foreground heavy animal drawn in the foreground. Again, I really like that blue. I think that was a newer pastel that I acquired recently. It does good for a kind of foggy sky sense where the sky might be showing through. So here I started smudging with my fingers a little bit. I don't generally recommend that. There can be kind of crazy chemicals in oil pastels. So I decided to actually change this up a bit and make this crocodile character from literature. He's going to be the crocodile from J.M. Barrie's Peter and Wendy. And I checked to make sure it was in the public domain so I can do this without getting in trouble. So in the story, the clock's already been swallowed by the crocodile, but since I can't make a sound from the work, I decided to just draw a kind of freehand in an alarm clock down next to the rock there. So now I'm adding the water in, and this is just going to be swamp water, so no current or ripples or anything. So I'm just kind of doing really loose, blurry reflections. Now I've started to run out of space on my phone here, so I'm not going to finish the right-hand side for this video, but I'll show you what it looked like when it was all done. And now for the final reveal. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it. It was a bit intense. I don't know if I'll do too many of these. But anyway, this guy will probably sit on the drying rack for about 4 weeks before I can spray it with fixative and cover it in varnish and frame it. And then it'll probably show up in my next show. If you want to check out my show schedule, you can find it on fineartbydaniel.com. Thanks everyone, and good night.